It was a quiet Sunday morning in Willow Creek, a small, sun-warmed town on the outskirts of Seattle. The rain from the night before had left the streets glistening, and the smell of damp pine trees filled the air. Claire Mitchell, 32, had recently moved into the neighborhood. She was an elementary school teacher who had spent most of her life in Denver before deciding she needed a change, a slower pace, a quieter place, and a chance to start over. Her new house was cozy but still half empty. Boxes lined the hallway, her curtains were temporary, and her coffee maker sat on the counter like a loyal old friend. That morning, as she stirred her oatmeal, she realized she had run out of sugar. It seemed like such a small thing, but Claire hated starting her day without her sweetened coffee. She looked outside, saw her new neighbor across the street, a man who seemed to live alone in a white house with a porch swing, and decided it was time to finally introduce herself. She took a breath, grabbed a small empty jar, and crossed the street. The door opened after one soft knock. Standing there was Ethan Carter, probably mid-30s, tall, with dark brown hair and soft green eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He wore a simple gray hoodie and jeans, his expression calm but a little distant. "Hi," Claire began, smiling nervously. "I'm Claire. I just moved in across the street. I was wondering if you might have some sugar I could borrow." Ethan blinked for a moment, then smiled, a gentle, almost hesitant smile. "Sugar," he repeated, his voice low and warm. "Yeah, I think I can help you with that." He disappeared inside for a moment and returned with a small bag. As he handed it to her, she noticed a faint scar near his wrist, like a reminder of something he didn't talk about. "Thanks," she said, holding the bag. "I promise I'll return it soon." "No rush," Ethan replied. Then, after a brief pause, "You're the new teacher at Willow Creek Elementary, right?" Claire raised her brows, surprised. "How did you know?" He pointed toward the mailbox in front of her house. "The school letter. I noticed it yesterday when I was mowing." She laughed softly. "You're observant." "I'm a writer," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Old habits die hard." A writer. That explained the quiet house, the thoughtful eyes, and the piles of notebooks she'd seen through his window one evening. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Ethan. I'll let you get back to your writing," she said, taking a step back. But he hesitated before closing the door. "Actually, would you like some coffee? I could use a break from the keyboard." They sat on his porch, two steaming mugs between them, talking about small things, the weather, the quirks of small-town life, and the way time seemed to move slower there. Claire found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. Ethan wasn't what she expected. He was kind but guarded, articulate but quiet, like someone who had learned to live with silence. When she asked what he wrote, he hesitated. "Mostly fiction," he said finally. "Though lately, I've been working on something personal." She didn't press. Everyone had their own stories to tell, and some were harder to share. Still, as the weeks passed, their friendship grew naturally. She'd wave at him from her mailbox, he'd stop by with coffee when she looked tired from grading papers. They began trading small favors. She'd bring cookies, he'd help fix her porch light. It was all unspoken but warm. One windy afternoon, a knock echoed at Claire's door. Ethan stood there, drenched from the rain. His eyes looked troubled. "Everything okay?" she asked, stepping aside. He nodded slowly. "I just needed to talk to someone." She poured him tea, and they sat quietly for a moment. Then he said softly, "You ever feel like you're trying to write your life again, but the old chapters keep showing up?" Claire looked at him carefully. "Every day," she said honestly. He exhaled, his voice trembling just slightly. "I used to be a journalist. 3 years ago, my fiancé and I were covering a story overseas, a charity project. There was an accident, she didn't make it." The words fell like raindrops, quiet, heavy, and honest. Claire's eyes softened. "Ethan, I'm so sorry." He nodded. "After that, I stopped writing for a long time. I came here to escape, or maybe to remember her in peace." Silence hung between them, not uncomfortable but filled with emotion. Claire reached out, gently placing her hand over his. "You don't have to keep escaping," she said. "Sometimes life doesn't want us to forget, it just wants us to heal differently." He looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. For a long time, they just sat there, two people who didn't need to fill the silence anymore. Over the next months, Ethan started writing again. He'd sit outside with his laptop, coffee mug in hand, and Claire would often wave from her porch before heading to school. He started smiling more. One afternoon, she found an envelope in her mailbox with her name written neatly across the front. Inside was a printed story. The title read, "The Woman Who Borrowed Sugar." It was his story, or rather, their story, written with a kind of poetic honesty that made her eyes sting with tears. In it, Ethan had described a lonely writer who had given up on words, and a woman who knocked on his door asking for something simple, sugar, but ended up giving him something far sweeter, hope. At the end, he wrote, "Greater than, she came for sugar, but left behind light." Claire walked across the street that evening, holding the story in her hands. Ethan was on the porch, reading. She smiled. "So, you wrote about me." He chuckled softly. "You were easy to write about." "It's beautiful," she said, sitting down beside him. "But you know, stories like this usually have endings." He closed his notebook, meeting her eyes. "Maybe this one's still being written." The porch lights flickered on, casting a soft glow between them. Claire felt the wind move through her hair and smiled, a quiet, content smile. For once, life didn't feel like something she had to fix or chase. It just felt right. Months later, Claire's classroom had a new bookshelf, filled with stories donated by a local author. The name printed on each cover, Ethan Carter. And every morning, before heading to class, she'd stop by his porch, holding 2 cups of coffee, one with no sugar, one sweetened just right. "Morning, writer," she'd say. "Morning, teacher," he'd reply. It became their ritual, their rhythm, proof that sometimes, the smallest moments lead to the biggest changes. Moral of the story: sometimes life gives us second chances in the most ordinary ways, like knocking on a stranger's door to borrow sugar, only to find healing, friendship, and maybe even love.